Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Olivia Hall. Today I'm going to be presenting on Albert Bandura and his theories of social cognitive learning. So don't worry if you're not too familiar with this theory. Hopefully by the end of this video you will have a good study guide here. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm not going to spend too much time here. This is just the presentation overview for your reference. And that was a picture of Bandura. If I had to summarize the main idea behind this theory, it's that not only is behavior observed, but there's also cognitive functions that follow that observation. And these cognitive functions, they're things that we reflect on, and they really contribute to our personality as well as our behaviors. Here in this photo, you can see the famous Bobo doll experiment. These children, they observed adults or an adult abusing the Bobo doll. Later on, they were put into a room. They're given these props, and as you can see, they reenacted the behavior that they had observed the adults doing. So here's a synopsis of David Bowie. Well, as you can see on the right, these are things that I personally picked out to be important or valuable. A quick fact is that he found his love for music during his time as a Boy Scout member. And the key connections, these are three people that seem to really impact his personality and how he learned. So Terry was his half-brother. He was said to really look up to his brother Terry. Sadly, his brother Terry passed away, so that really affected David. He also really looked up to Little Richard. And finally, his father. His father was described as being very gentle and sweet, never raised his voice, and him and David seemed to get along really well. So he had a strong father figure. So theory topic number 1 that I chose was Bandura's social cognitive theory. This is the general term, and I kind of broke it down. More so, I started to look at the observational aspect of this. So if this is a little bit confusing, I apologize. Just wait till we get to the next slide, and it should be clear for you by then. This is kind of an overview of the whole theory. So essentially, it's built on the foundation of the social learning theory. Now, the social learning theory, Bandura really worked with a lot. I think I read some articles that said he developed it, but don't quote me on that. This theory looks at observation, imitation, and modeling, so 3 aspects. But then Bandura decided to reevaluate what's been already searched and researched about this. He found that there's also cognitive factors that occur to help and affect the learning process. Observational learning consists of 3 elements, which are observation, imitation, and modeling. When we look at David Bowie, we can see that his favorite celebrity role model was Little Ricky. Bowie's choice of costumes and makeup are the imitation behaviors of Little Ricky. So it was said that Little Ricky was famous for his costumes, and it almost kind of sounded like David Bowie sort of stole these ideas, but he really took them and made them into his own. So David Bowie is the observer in this situation, and Little Ricky is the model. Here's the second topic, the triadic, I believe it's pronounced, triadic reciprocal causation model. So this essentially describes a feedback loop between the person, the environment, and behavior. So if you think of a triangle, which you'll see in our next slide, we have these 3 elements. These 3 factors work together to influence behavior, and ultimately it depends on whichever is strongest at the moment, as you'll see, I'll further explain in this slide. So for example, you can see that here we have a student, a teacher, and what looks like, or what I was hoping to make into a positive report card. I had to make this image myself, so please bear with me. So a student is given positive feedback and encouragement from their professor. The professor is the environment. Maybe you could even say the environment is the classroom. The student is used as an example to the rest of the class to model good behavior. So that would be the teacher saying, this person used this type of study habit and it was effective, and therefore the student then behaves in this manner more often since it resulted in a reward. And the reward was the good grade that was a result of the behavior of studying. So I would just take a second and try to get familiar with the terms that you see here on the left. They might show up on your test, I'm not sure. One thing I'd really like to highlight is the personal factor in this model. As you can see, there's a term here, self-efficacy. We're going to be getting into that in the next slide. This is going to be really important as it's a major factor of this theory. Now, when this triadic reciprocal causation model is applied to David Bowie, we can see that Bowie was known to be a wild performer, often behaving in untraditional and seductive ways on stage. That was something that he was really known for, and that was a behavior that he did. So with this behavior, it resulted in more attention from the media because there were some photos taken and people kind of thought, who is this guy? And I need to go see a show. So this affected his environment because, understandably, as the word got out, his shows started to increase in size. So that affects his environment. And the success and reward of this behavior resulted in achieving of goals. And we know that his goal was to be a musician, be a performer. And the more people that were showing up in his environment, the more his goal was being actualized. So the third theory topic is the concept of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, it simply just refers to an individual's belief in their abilities to accomplish a task. So people with a high self-efficacy will believe that they're likely to succeed, whereas people with a low self-efficacy might believe that they're more likely to fail. And the funny thing about this is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, if you're someone who thinks, I'm terrible at math, I know that's me personally. I used to always think that way. Oh, I'm terrible at math. I never get a good grade. And then, sure enough, I would perform poorly at during my math tests. The cycle will continue. Now, this doesn't have to be forever. This can be changed. Verbal persuasion is something that's been found to impact a person's self-efficacy. So maybe you can think back to a time that you've had a coach or a teacher or maybe a boss or a professor, someone who you see as being credible. If you get a pep talk from this person, it can really cause your self-efficacy to increase. It instills that sense of that you can do anything you set your mind to, and this has really been found to increase a person's performance. It can also go the opposite way. I know some people sadly have stories of a guidance counselor telling them, oh, you'll never become a doctor, lawyer, etc., because you just don't have the grades for it. And then therefore, you're not going to achieve good grades because you have a low sense of self-efficacy after that, understandably so. We also tend to only try to achieve goals which we believe we'll be successful with. And that's because activities that we're not confident with give us uncomfortable physiological symptoms. So if you think, I'm not good at giving presentations, then you're gonna, get that anxious feeling before a presentation, and then you might not do very well at it because you're so caught up in the symptoms of that. So how do we take advantage of self-efficacy and apply it in our own lives to make the most out of this concept? Well, individuals, they found, tend to succeed despite the struggles when they view that the task is a challenge to be mastered rather than a threat to be avoided. So someone like David Bowie didn't see music as being a threat to be avoided. Despite the fact that he failed so many times, he released so many different songs and he was a part of so many different bands, and they were putting out music and it just wasn't going anywhere. Now, most people might, get kind of down about that, but Bowie, he saw this as a challenge. So, as you can see here on the right, his brother Terry, who was in the military and was older than him, he was a credible person and highly regarded by Bowie. So Terry would take David Bowie to music shows and encourage him to pursue his passion for music. And because of this pep talk, as I mentioned earlier, Bowie did not give up because he wanted to become a master at performing, and he had a good sense of self-efficacy. He knew that maybe he wasn't the best, but he wanted to master that skill, and he wanted to see where it was going to take him. Here is a summary. So essentially, Bandura changed the way which we understand the learning process. Bandura believed that behavior was observed and that a cognitive process followed, which helped to solidify the learning. This resulted in personal reflection and an understanding of oneself. This understanding then translated into behaviors. So David Bowie demonstrates the three theories mentioned above throughout his journey to fame. Often he experienced setbacks and failure. He was a part of different environments that were not beneficial to him, including drug-related environments. But he persevered regardless because of his high sense of self-efficacy and belief that he had what it takes to reach his goal. So I hope that from this presentation you'll take away some valuable information, and basically just knowing that Bandura, he's one of the most recent. His understanding of how we learn is what really shapes our understanding today. We now know that it's not enough to just observe and instantly learn. There has to be some cognitive process happening where we're reflecting, we're looking inside of ourselves, inside of our personality, and that there's certain other environmental factors that can affect our self-perception and our ability to learn. So I'm just about at 15 minutes. I'm going to cut it off there. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave your feedback in the comments. I'll try to help you out. Good luck with your test, and all the best.